There are moments in life that split time in two, before and after, and you never see them coming. I was sitting in my truck outside a lumberyard in East Nashville, reviewing supply orders for next week's job sites, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer it. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Because what I'm about to share changed my life forever, and maybe, just maybe, it will speak to yours too. My name is Raymond Cole. I'm 58 years old, a construction contractor right here in Nashville, Tennessee. I've spent my entire adult life building things. Homes, businesses, dreams. Some mornings, standing on a job site with sawdust clinging to my jeans and blueprints in my hands, I feel like I'm exactly where I was put on this earth to be. I married Diane 30 years ago, back when I was still young enough to confuse ambition with arrogance, and stubborn enough to believe that hard work could hold anything together. She was beautiful, confident, and she had this way of looking at me like I could move mountains. We had one daughter together, Claire. Watching her grow up has been the greatest project of my life. 2 years ago, she married a man named Marcus Ellison, a finance guy with smooth hands and a smile that came a little too easy. I wasn't sure about him at first. He seemed polished in a way that made me uneasy, the kind of man who was too accustomed to getting things without earning them. But Claire loved him, and that was enough for me. Now Claire is 6 months pregnant, and I'm about to become a grandfather. The first time she told me, her hand resting on that growing belly, something cracked open in my chest, something warm and terrifying and beautiful all at once. This baby was everything I'd worked toward. Legacy, continuity, proof that the Cole name meant something solid in this world. My hands tell my story better than words ever could. Scarred from decades on job sites. A finger that didn't heal quite right after a framing accident back in '98. Calluses thick as leather from gripping hammers and lumber. Permanent lines etched into my palms that no amount of scrubbing can fix. Diane used to laugh and say I could build a cathedral with these hands. She wasn't wrong. I've built subdivisions in Franklin, custom homes in Brentwood, commercial projects downtown. But more than structures, I try to build a life rooted in something real. Hard work, loyalty, family above everything. That's why when my phone rang that ordinary Tuesday afternoon, everything felt like it was finally clicking into place. The woman on the other end spoke slowly, carefully, like she was reading from a script designed to prevent heart attacks. Mr. Cole, this is the Tennessee Lottery Commission. We need to verify some information regarding a ticket you purchased last Thursday. My first thought was spam. My second was that I'd gotten tangled up in someone else's mess. But then she read back the numbers, and I remembered. I'd stopped for gas on the way home from a job site in Murfreesboro. The jackpot had been climbing for weeks. Claire had joked that someone had to win eventually. So I bought a ticket on a whim. Mr. Cole, I'm calling to inform you that you are the sole winner of the Powerball jackpot. She paused. The amount is $100 million. $100 million. The words landed like they belonged to someone else's life. Someone who wore suits and understood what numbers that big actually meant. I sat in my truck staring at the dashboard while she kept talking about claim procedures and financial advisors and wire transfers, and my hands, these scarred, calloused hands, started shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. When I finally hung up, I didn't move for a long time. The afternoon sun beat through the windshield. Somewhere nearby, a horn honked. The world kept turning, completely indifferent to the fact that mine had just tilted on its axis. That evening, I drove home with my mind racing. I'd never kept secrets from Diane, not in 30 years. By the time I pulled into our driveway in Green Hills, I'd made my decision. She was my partner. She deserved to know. I found her in the kitchen, and when I told her about the lottery, her eyes went wide, her hand flying to her mouth. Raymond, are you serious? $100 million. Every penny, I said, still barely believing it myself. She threw her arms around me, and I held her, breathing in her familiar perfume. And in that moment, I felt complete. Like every long hour, every sacrifice, every choice I'd ever made had been leading to this. We stayed up late talking about possibilities. The mansion in Belmead I'd been building for Claire, Now I could finish it perfectly, spare absolutely nothing. Marcus's struggling business, I could help. Claire and the baby, I could set up a trust fund that would secure 4 generations forward. I want to announce it at the gender reveal party, I told her. Make it a real celebration. New life and a new beginning for all of us. Diane smiled and squeezed my hand. That's perfect, Raymond. Absolutely perfect. And oh, how perfect it all seemed. How warm. How right. I had no idea that I was sharing the most important news of my life with someone who was already calculating how to take it all away. A few days after that lottery call, we had a family dinner. One of those Friday evenings I'd always treasured, or at least thought I had. Claire and Marcus came over. Diane had made her signature pot roast, and the house smelled like comfort and 20 years of tradition. I sat at the head of our dining table, the same oak table I'd built 25 years ago with these 2 hands, and I watched my family. Really watched them in a way I hadn't done in years. Diane sat to my right, impeccable as always. At 53, she still turned heads. Perfectly styled auburn hair. Designer clothes that fit her like they'd been made for her specifically. Jewelry that caught the light with every small movement. Since I'd told her about the money, there'd been something different about her energy, an excitement, an anticipation. I thought it was happiness for our future. I realized now I was seeing something else entirely. Marcus sat across from me, 34, handsome in that country club way, pressed khakis, hairstyled to look effortless. He asked about my work with what seemed like genuine interest in the mansion's progress. But when I asked about his restaurant consulting business, his answers turned vague. We're navigating some challenges, Raymond, he said, squeezing Claire's hand. But your support means everything. With the baby coming and the market being what it is, we're just grateful for family. I nodded. I wanted to believe the best. And then there was Claire, my daughter, 29 years old and absolutely glowing. One hand perpetually resting on her rounded belly, talking animatedly about nursery colors and baby names. When she looked at Marcus, it was with complete trust. When she looked at me, it was gratitude that made my chest tighten. Dad, you've given us everything, she said when conversation turned to the mansion. I don't know how we'll ever repay you. You don't repay family, sweetheart. I told her, my throat suddenly tight. You just keep building. Keep moving forward together. When dessert was nearly gone, Diane's peach cobbler, another tradition going back 15 years, I set down my fork. I have an announcement, I said. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me. The mansion in Belmead is finished. It's done, Claire. It's yours. My gift to you and Marcus. The silence lasted only a heartbeat before Claire's face crumpled, and she pushed back from the table and threw her arms around my neck, her belly pressed between us, and she was crying and laughing at the same time. Dad, I can't. It's too much. That house is enormous. I held my daughter and breathed in her shampoo, the same brand since high school, and nothing in the world has ever felt more right than that moment. Marcus stood and extended his hand. Sterling, I don't know what to say. Thank you. This changes everything for us. And there's more, I said, settling back into my chair. Something bigger. Something I'll share at Monday's party. But you'll have to wait. It was then that I saw it. A flicker. So fast I almost missed it. Diane and Marcus's eyes meeting across the table. Something passing between them. Gone in less than a second. Marcus raised his glass. To Raymond. The most generous father-in-law a man could ask for. We all raised our glasses. Claire was still wiping happy tears. And I sat there feeling like the luckiest man in Nashville. I can't wait for Monday, I said. It's going to be a celebration none of us will ever forget. I'm sure it will, Diane said softly. If you've ever had a moment where you felt on top of the world, only to sense something quietly wrong beneath the surface, drop a comment below. You don't have to explain everything. Just let me know you're here. Later that night, getting ready for bed, I heard Diane downstairs on the phone. Her voice was low, but I caught fragments. Monday. Everything's falling into place. Just need to be patient. I figured she was calling a friend, excited about the party. Why would I think anything else? After 30 years, trust wasn't something I questioned. It was as natural as breathing. But that small seed of unease, the one I buried without even knowing I was burying it, was already planted. And some seeds, once planted, grow in the dark. Don't go anywhere, because in part 2, I'm going to tell you what I heard through a cracked door of the mansion I built with my own hands. Words that shattered 30 years in a single moment. And once you hear them, you'll understand why I could never go back to who I was before that afternoon. Part 2 is coming, and it will break your heart. Welcome back. If you're just joining me, my name is Raymond Cole. I'm a 58-year-old contractor from Nashville, Tennessee. I won $100 million in the lottery, and I made the mistake of telling the woman I'd trusted with 30 years of my life. What I'm about to share still makes it hard to breathe sometimes. A week before the gender reveal party, I drove to the Belle Meade mansion with my oldest friend and foreman, a man named Howard. Howard had been with me for 20 years, closer than most blood relatives. I'd asked him to come for one final walkthrough. If there was anyone who could catch what I might miss, it was him. The mansion rose before us like something out of a magazine. Southern colonial architecture, white columns reaching 2 stories high, wraparound porches on both levels, gardens that would bloom spectacularly come spring, a circular driveway curving through ancient oaks draped in Spanish moss. Everything I'd imagined when I first bought that land 5 years ago. "Boss," Howard said, shaking his head slowly, "this is the finest work you've ever done. Claire is one lucky girl." We spent an hour going room by room, testing every fixture, every switch, running water in every sink and shower. The house was perfect. I made sure of it. And then I noticed something odd. A silver sedan parked near the side entrance. Diane's car. She hadn't said anything about coming out today. My stomach tightened with something I couldn't name yet. We headed toward the main house, but it was empty. Then voices drifted from behind the property, near the pool house and garden cottage I'd added last month. Diane's idea, a place for guests when Claire and Marcus hosted parties. Howard and I moved toward the sound, and as we got closer, I recognized Diane's voice, clear as a bell through the afternoon air. I was about to call out when I heard another voice. "Marcus." I stopped cold. Howard froze beside me, his hand instinctively finding my arm. Diane's voice came first, and it was cold in a way I had never, in 30 years of marriage, ever heard her sound. "Raymond's going to announce the lottery money at the party. Once we get him to set up that trust fund for the baby, we drain everything and disappear together." My legs went weak. Marcus's reply came easy, almost casual, like they were discussing weekend plans. "Your daughter is so naive, Diane. She actually believes we're the perfect couple. She thinks this baby is going to fix everything." And then Diane laughed. That laugh. I will hear that laugh for the rest of my life. Sharp, cruel, a sound that had no place coming from the woman I had loved. I've been trapped in this working-class nightmare for 3 decades. Marcus, his dirty hands, his job site stories, pretending to care about his so-called honest work. I deserve so much better than this. We both do. "What about Claire?" Marcus asked, and there was not a single drop of concern in his voice. "Only logistics. Claire will be fine. She's as stupid as her father. She'll never figure out until it's too late. Let Raymond play the doting grandfather while we're living in Europe on his millions." The world stopped. I could not breathe, could not move, could not process what was happening. Every word was a sledgehammer. Dirty hands. Working-class nightmare. Stupid as her father. The woman I'd built a life with, the man I'd welcomed as a son, together, planning to destroy everything while using my own grandchild as bait. Howard's hand tightened on my shoulder, grounding me, keeping me upright. "Brother," he whispered, his voice shaking. I heard it. "I'm here." My hands clenched into fists. These calloused, scarred hands she called dirty. Hands that had framed houses and held newborn Claire only minutes after she entered this world. Hands that had built every room of the mansion we were standing next to, brick by brick, beam by beam, for the future of my daughter's family. Through the crack in the door, I could see them now. Diane leaning against the pool house wall. Marcus standing close. Too close. Not touching, but the intimacy between them was unmistakable and devastating. How long? How many nights had I kissed her goodnight while she was planning this? How many dinners? How many I love yous? "We need to go," Howard whispered urgently. "Now, before they know we're here." He was right. I couldn't confront them. Not like this. Not when rage, was swallowing everything. We backed away silently, boots finding soft grass instead of gravel. My heart hammered so loud I was certain they'd hear it. We made it to the truck. Howard climbed in beside me, his face pale with shock and fury. He'd known Diane almost as long as I had. He'd been at our wedding. He watched Claire grow up. I started the engine, my hands shaking on the wheel. In the rearview mirror, I could see the mansion, that beautiful, perfect house I'd built with love for my daughter's future. The house where my wife was plotting to rob me blind alongside my son-in-law. I know this is a lot to take in. If you've ever trusted someone completely and found out it was all a performance, you know exactly how this silence feels. Drop a heart in the comments. Let me know you're with me. Howard drove. I couldn't trust my hands on the wheel. Nashville streets blurred past the window, every familiar corner suddenly foreign, like I'd woken up in someone else's life. I couldn't stop hearing her voice. Dirty hands. Working-class nightmare. I looked down at my palms. Scarred. Calloused. Every mark on them a memory. The crooked finger from that framing accident in '98. The burn from a welding mishap in 2003. The lines that no amount of soap could soften. These hands had built our first home together, a modest 3-bedroom we'd stretched every penny to afford. These hands had held Claire minutes after she was born, terrified of breaking something so small and so perfect. And Diane called them dirty. Howard pulled up in my workshop in East Nashville. The smell of sawdust and raw wood hit me when I walked in. Tools on pegboard walls. Blueprints spread on workbenches. This had always been where I thought most clearly. Brother, Howard said from the doorway. What do you need? Just tell me. I need to protect Claire, I said. My voice surprised me. Steadier than I felt. She's 6 months pregnant, Howard. And Marcus's child might not even be his. Howard's knuckles went white. Don't do that to yourself yet. We don't know anything yet. I thought I knew everything, I said. 30 years. I thought I knew. That night, standing alone in my workshop, I made my first real decision since the world cracked open. I would not break. Not yet. Not when Claire needed me, clear-headed and strong. Because the truth was coming. But it needed to arrive with evidence. And it needed to arrive on my terms. I reached for my phone and called my lawyer. Leonard, it's Raymond Cole. I need an appointment tomorrow morning. It's urgent. I steadied my voice. And I need absolute discretion. Stay with me. Because in part 3, I'm going to show you how I spent 8 days quietly building a case that would expose everything in front of 35 people. I recorded things that made grown men go pale. I found emails that went back 3 years. And I sat across dinner tables from the 2 people planning to destroy my family, smiling, while everything inside me was breaking. Part 3 will leave you speechless. If you're just finding this story, my name is Raymond Cole. My wife of 30 years and my son-in-law had been conspiring to steal my lottery winnings and disappear to Europe together. And on the day I found out, I made a choice. I wouldn't act on rage. I would act on truth. The next morning at 7 a.m., I was in my lawyer Leonard's office on the 10th floor of a building overlooking the Cumberland River. He took one look at my face and said, "Sit down, Raymond." What happened? I told him everything. When I finished, he let out a long breath and leaned back in his chair. We're looking at infidelity, conspiracy to commit fraud, and possibly more, depending on how deep this goes. He pulled out a legal pad. First question, the lottery money. Whose name is on the account? Mine. Just mine. Bought the ticket with my own money. Claimed it myself. Haven't told anyone but Howard. Good. That's very good. He wrote something down. In Tennessee, lottery winnings claimed during marriage can potentially be considered marital assets if commingled with joint accounts. But since you haven't deposited it anywhere joint and can prove it was purchased and claimed solely by you, we can argue it's entirely separate property. Can she take it? Not if we move fast. By 2 that afternoon, I was in the office of Vincent Cross, a financial advisor who moved with the precise efficiency of someone who made his living stopping exactly this kind of disaster. Within 3 hours, I'd signed more documents than I could count. Trust agreements, asset protection filings, declarations of separate property. The $100 million was locked in an irrevocable trust only I could access. My business was firewalled. The mansion in Belmead, still titled solely in my name since it was meant as a gift, remained mine entirely. Leonard also brought up the prenuptial agreement. Diane's father had insisted on it 30 years ago, and I never thought about it once since. Leonard almost smiled. Best decision you never made. There's an infidelity clause. If either party commits adultery, they forfeit all claims to marital assets and alimony. Between that and the lottery money being separate property, Diane walks away with nothing. That night, sitting alone in my workshop, I let myself feel the full weight of that word. Nothing. 30 years, and she'd built nothing that was truly hers, because she'd spent them destroying mine. The following day, Howard and I returned to the Belmead mansion to install surveillance equipment Leonard had cleared legally, since I owned the property outright. Small cameras disguised as smoke detectors. Audio recorders no bigger than buttons. We worked methodically, installing them in the pool house and in the main living room. Walking through those rooms was a particular kind of torture. Every detail I'd obsessed over now weaponized. The crown molding I'd spent weeks perfecting. The custom-built tints. The hand-laid tile. All of it built with love for my daughter's family. Now was a trap. "Boss," Howard said quietly as we finished. "You're doing the right thing. Claire needs to know the truth." I nodded and couldn't say anything back. By Wednesday morning, the system was live. The first recording came through Thursday morning at 10:15. My phone buzzed. My hand shook as I pressed play. "The party's in 5 days," Marcus said casually. "I've already booked flights to Geneva. 2 weeks out. First class, obviously." "I'll follow 3 days later," Diane replied. "After I've transferred everything from a trust fund. We need the time gap to look natural." I had to stop the recording. Had to stand up and walk away and breathe. The second recording came that afternoon. "The restaurant consulting business is done, Diane. Completely underwater. I've been embezzling from investors to cover losses. And there are some very dangerous people who want their money back." A pause. The kind who don't sue. The kind who break things. So Marcus wasn't just a con man. He was desperate, backed into a corner by his own failures, and he decided my family's destruction was his way out. The third recording hit hardest Friday evening, just as I was shutting down for the night. Diane's voice. "We've been planning this for 3 years, Marcus. Since we first met at that fundraiser. Since you told me about your business ideas and I saw a way out. Everything since then, the courtship, the wedding, even the pregnancy, it's all been calculated. Claire never suspected. Claire is exactly like her father. Trusting, naive, desperate to believe the best in people. 3 years. They've been plotting this since before Marcus and Claire were even engaged. My daughter's entire marriage was a lie from the very first date. 3 years of lies. 3 years of watching my daughter fall in love with a man who was performing every single moment. If this story is reaching you, please share it. This is the kind of truth people need to hear." That Saturday morning, I met a woman named Diana at a small diner in Hermitage. She was Marcus's former secretary, and she was shaking when she slid a manila folder across the table toward me. "I felt sick about this for months, Mr. Cole. These are emails between Marcus and your wife going back 3 years. And these are financial documents showing how he was planning to get you to sign fake business loan papers." I opened the folder. The emails were devastating in their casualness. They called it the Cole Project. They discussed strategies for managing Raymond's expectations. They debated timelines and exit strategies. They spoke about my life like I was a mark in a con game. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because Claire deserves better," she said quietly. "And because Marcus threatened me when I said I couldn't be part of it anymore." Over the next several days, I had to do the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I had to sit across from Diane at dinner every evening and perform the role of devoted husband. I had to listen to her talk about our future, about France, about the Riviera, about all the wonderful things we do with the money. "Darling, I'm so proud of you," she said one Wednesday evening. 100 million. We're going to do amazing things." Every word was poison, and I smiled and nodded and said, "Whatever makes you happy, sweetheart." Marcus came by Thursday afternoon to help with party preparations. He shook my hand with that confident grip, looking me straight in the eye. "Sterling, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us. I wanted to break every bone in that hand. Instead, I clapped him on the shoulder. Family takes care of family. Marcus. That's what we do. After Monday's announcement, we should sit down about some investment opportunities, he said smoothly. Ideas that could really multiply that lottery money. Absolutely, I said. Everything's going to change after Monday. He smiled, thinking I meant I'd be writing checks. He had absolutely no idea what was coming. And then Thursday afternoon, Claire stopped by to help with decorations, and she was so radiant, so full of happiness, chattering about baby names and nursery themes and how perfectly everything was falling into place. We worked side by side, hanging streamers, and I pulled her into a hug and held her for a long time. I love you, baby girl, more than anything in this world. No matter what happens, no matter what you hear or learn, I love you, and I'll always be here for you. She pulled back laughing, confused by my intensity. Dad, you're being weird. Of course I know you love me. I watch her go back to hanging decorations, humming happily, and I memorized that moment. The last time she would stand in that garden as innocent as she was right then. The last time her world would be whole. In part 4, everything breaks open. 35 people in that garden. Pink confetti in the air, and a recording that silenced every single one of them. I'm going to take you through every moment of that afternoon. The confrontation, the confession, the collapse of 30 years of lies in front of everyone I'd ever trusted. And the moment that broke my heart the most wasn't Diane's voice on that recording. It was what Claire screamed at her mother. Part 4 is where the truth finally gets its day. Don't leave. The day arrived. Monday afternoon. Belmead. The mansion I built. The garden looked perfect. Pink and blue ribbons streaming from the oak trees. Tables draped in white linen. A banner stretched across the arch reading, boy or girl. The catering staff was setting up barbecue stations. The gender reveal cake sat center stage, white frosting and a question mark hiding what only the bakery knew. Everything looked like a celebration. Only I knew it was a reckoning. I stood near the mansion's back entrance, greeting guests. 35 people, just as planned. Barbara, Diane's book club friend of 20 years, arrived carrying a yellow-wrapped gift. Miguel Santos came with his wife, both dressed up. Miguel had worked on my crew for 15 years, his hands as calloused as mine. More of my crew filtered in, men who'd helped build this very mansion. Howard arrived early and positioned himself near the sound system. He gave me one quiet nod. Everything was ready. At 2:20, Lauren, Claire's best friend from high school, a nurse at Vanderbilt, walked through the garden gate and came directly to me. I'm here, Raymond, she said quietly. Right beside her, just like you asked. Thank you, Lauren. She's going to need you. Lauren searched my face for a moment, trying to understand what was coming. Then she nodded and didn't ask another question. At 2:30, Claire arrived with Marcus. My daughter was radiant in a light blue maternity dress, her belly prominent at 27 weeks, her smile the kind that could light up any room in any building I've ever walked into. Marcus had his hand at her waist, playing the devoted husband, nodding at guests, accepting congratulations with gracious ease. They walked toward me together, and every protective instinct in my body had to be forcibly held down. Dad, Claire threw her arms around me. This is incredible. The decorations, the food, everyone's here. Only the best for my baby girl. Marcus extended his hand with that confident smile. Raymond, this is amazing. Thank you for doing this for us. I shook it and met his eyes. We're ready for the big revelations today. Something flickered in his expression, just for a moment. Then Claire was pulling him toward the food tables, and the moment passed. Diane arrived at 2:45, fashionably late, as always, wearing a cream-colored designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Perfect hair, jewelry catching the sunlight. She moved through the crowd, performing her final act as the proud wife, the excited grandmother-to-be, the woman who had everything. When she reached me, she slipped her arm through mine and leaned close. Sterling, darling, this is beautiful. We're so lucky. I looked at her, really looked, saw through the perfect makeup to the calculation beneath, saw through the smile to the contempt she'd been hiding for years. Yes, I said softly. We certainly are. She kissed my cheek, and I didn't flinch. 30 years of love reduced to a performance. And neither of us knew which one of us had been performing longer. We're about to reach the moment everything breaks open. Before we get there, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to hold a painful truth inside while pretending everything was fine? Leave a comment, because what I'm about to describe took every piece of strength I had. At 3:10, I caught Howard's eye. He nodded. System was live. At 3:15, I walked to the microphone. Conversations began to quiet. Someone clinked a glass. The garden fell into a beautiful, unsuspecting silence. 35 faces turned toward me. Claire and Marcus stood in the center of the crowd, holding hands, smiling. Diane stood nearby, posture perfect, expression one of proud anticipation. I introduced the gender reveal. The confetti cannons exploded. Pink burst across the garden like a celebration of spring itself, ribbons of rose and fuchsia streaming through the air, catching sunlight, floating down over the crowd like blessings. Claire screamed with joy. Marcus lifted her carefully, mindful of the belly, spinning her while she laughed and cried at the same time. The crowd erupted. Women rushed forward. Men clapped each other on the back. "A granddaughter!" Diane exclaimed, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The cake was cut, pink layers inside. Champagne was poured. People toasted to new beginnings. I made my way through the crowd to my daughter. She threw her arms around me, her face wet with joy. "Dad, a girl. We're having a girl." And I held her, and I let myself cry too. Real tears. For the granddaughter I already loved. For the daughter whose world I was about to shatter. For the last moments of the innocence that was about to end in this beautiful garden. "I love you, baby girl," I whispered into her hair. "Whatever happens today, whatever you hear or learn, I love you, and I'll always be here. Always." She pulled back laughing. "Dad, you're doing it again." 10 minutes. I let the celebration breathe for 10 minutes. Let them eat cake and take photos and toast the little girl who would carry the Cole name forward. Let them have this joy before I took it apart. Then I returned to the microphone. Tapped it once. Twice. Conversations faded. 35 faces turned back to me, smiling, expecting more good news. "I want to share something else with you all," I said. "Something I've been keeping quiet until today." I paused. Recently, I came into some money. $100 million, to be exact. The collective gasp was audible. Eyes wide. Hands over mouths. Barbara Sullivan actually went still with shock. "I won the lottery 2 weeks ago, and I kept it quiet because I wanted to do something meaningful with it. Something that would secure my family's future." I saw Preston's eyes light up. Saw Diane's smile turn triumphant. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. "I plan to split it," I continued, my voice steady and measured. "Half for my daughter and granddaughter, set up in a trust. The other half for my wife and son-in-law." Diane reached over and touched my arm. "Raymond, you're too generous. You've always been too generous." Around us, people smiled. This was the happy ending they'd expected. Then I said the 3 words that changed the temperature of the entire garden. I was going to. Past tense. The smiles began to falter. The air shifted. Lauren moved closer to Claire, her hand finding my daughter's shoulder. Diane's expression stayed fixed, but I saw uncertainty flash through her eyes. Marcus's posture changed, tension creeping into his shoulders. "I was going to announce it today," I said, my voice dropping to something quieter. "Share my good fortune with the people I loved most." The silence was total, but then I discovered something that changed absolutely everything. "Dad," Claire said quietly. "What do you mean?" I looked at my daughter, memorized her face in this last moment of not knowing. Then I looked at Diane, at Marcus, and every mask I'd been wearing for 2 weeks finally fell away. I discovered that the 2 people I planned to share this fortune with have been lying to me. To all of us. For years. I held up the speaker connected to my phone, the device Howard and I had tested 3 times to make sure it would carry to every corner of that garden. This recording was made at this mansion 2 weeks ago, in the pool house. Diane went pale. Actually pale, the color draining from beneath her makeup. Marcus took a step back, his arm dropping from Claire's shoulders. I pressed play. Diane's voice filled the garden, crystal clear and unmistakable. "Raymond's going to announce the lottery money at the party." Once we get him to set up that trust fund for the baby, we drain everything and disappear together. The crowd gasped. Then Marcus's voice. Your daughter is so naive, Diane. She actually believes we're the perfect couple. She thinks this baby is going to fix everything. Claire made a sound. Small. Wounded. The kind of sound that a person makes when something inside them cracks clean through. Then Diane's laugh came through the speakers. That cold, sharp sound I'd heard through the pool house door and would never forget for the rest of my life. I've been trapped in this working-class nightmare for 3 decades. His dirty hands. His job site stories. Pretending to care about his so-called honest work. I deserve so much better than this. And then the moment that silenced everything. What about Claire? Claire will be fine. She's as stupid as her father. She'll never figure out until it's too late. Let Raymond play the doting grandfather while we're living in Europe on his millions. And the last piece, the one that buried them entirely. We've been planning this for 3 years, Marcus. Since before you even proposed. The courtship, the wedding, the pregnancy. All of it calculated. And Claire made it so easy. I stopped the recording. The silence in that garden was the loudest thing I've ever heard. Pink confetti lay scattered on the ground like the remnants of something beautiful that had been torn apart. Claire stood in the center of it all, one hand on her belly, her face cycling through emotions faster than I could follow. Confusion, disbelief, dawning, terrible understanding. She looked at Marcus. Her voice was barely a whisper. Tell me it's not true. Marcus stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing. Tell me. Claire's scream shattered whatever stillness was left in that garden. Marcus backed away, hands raised. Claire, I can explain. Explain what? That you never loved me? That our entire marriage was a lie? That you got me pregnant as part of a con? Her voice broke on that last word in a way I will carry with me to my grave. She turned to Diane, her mother. Her voice went somewhere desperate, somewhere young. Mom, please. Tell me Dad got it wrong somehow. Tell me there's been a mistake. Diane's mask shattered. What emerged from beneath it was not remorse. It was contempt, cold, and unbothered. You want the truth? I've been suffocating in this middle-class mediocrity for 30 years. Watching your father come home covered in sawdust. Listening to his boring construction stories. Pretending I was proud of his honest work when all I felt was embarrassment. You call me stupid. Claire's voice went shrill. Your own daughter. Your own daughter. She wrapped both arms around her belly, protectively, instinctively, every maternal impulse firing at once. And Lauren was there in an instant, one arm around Claire's shoulders, holding her up as her knees began to give. Get away from me. Claire shoved Marcus when he tried to reach for her. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again. Barbara Sullivan was the first to move. She walked straight up to Diane, looked her in the eye, and slapped her hard across the face. The sound echoed across the garden. 30 years, Barbara said, her voice shaking with fury. 30 years I've been your friend. Miguel Santos stepped forward, his jaw tight with anger. Those calloused hands built half this city. Those hands built this mansion you were planning to steal. Stop talking, I said, cutting through everything with a voice I barely recognized as my own. Just stop. You've said enough, Diane. You've said more than enough. I returned to the microphone one final time. My lawyers will be in contact with both of you. Every piece of evidence has been legally documented. Recordings, emails, financial records showing embezzlement and fraud. All of it filed and ready. I looked at Marcus specifically, and those dangerous people you owe money to. Marcus, I may have some contact information I'm willing to share. Marcus's face went from gray to green. I walked to Claire, gently taking her arm. Baby girl, you and your daughter are coming home with me right now. Everything I have is yours. The business, the money, all of it. Let's go. Lauren supported her on one side. I took the other. We walked through the garden as the guests parted for us. Faces full of grief and shock and something that looked like reverence. Barbara hugged Claire as we passed. Miguel squeezed my shoulder without a word. Behind us, Diane's voice rose high and desperate. You can't just walk away, Raymond. That money is half mine. I have rights. I kept walking. Raymond, you self-righteous pathetic. Howard's voice cut cleanly through hers. "Ma'am, you need to leave. This is private property." I helped Claire into my truck. Lauren climbed in beside her and took her hand. In the rearview mirror, I could see the mansion. Pink confetti scattered like fallen petals. Guests dispersing in stunned silence. And Diane standing motionless in the center of it all, surrounded by the rubble of 30 years of carefully constructed lies. Claire looked back through the rear window. When the mansion finally disappeared around a bend, she spoke. "You used to say, 'Baby girl, anything built on lies will never stand.' I never really understood what you meant." Her voice was hollow, gutted. "I understand now." I reached over and took her hand. "We'll build something real, sweetheart. Something true. It'll be harder, but it'll be solid. I promise you that." I know that was hard to read. It was hard to live. But stay with me for part 5. Because after everything fell apart, something beautiful was rebuilt from the pieces. And there is one moment in a hospital room at 5:17 in the evening that gave me back everything. Part 5 is where we find out what truth actually builds. Don't go anywhere. In the weeks that followed the party, the legal machinery began to turn. Restraining orders were issued within 48 hours. Diane was prohibited from contacting me or Claire, from coming within 500 feet of either of our homes. Marcus received the same order, with additional restrictions specifically protecting Claire. That didn't stop them from trying. Diane called constantly through that first week. Voicemails cycling through denial, then rage, then bargaining, then something that sounded almost like the woman I'd married. Almost. I deleted every one without listening. When the text started, I blocked her entirely. She came to the house once. Howard was there doing repairs on my porch. She pulled up in her Mercedes and demanded to see Claire. Howard told me later how she'd actually tried to push past him. "I called the cops," Howard said. "She was gone before they arrived. But it's documented now." Violation of the restraining order. Marcus took a different approach. Long, rambling emails to Claire, shifting between apology and justification, claiming he truly cared about her and that Diane had pressured him into everything. Claire showed me the first one, hands shaking. He says he was going to tell me the truth. After the baby was born. "Do you believe him?" I asked gently. "No." She deleted it and blocked his address. He had 3 years to tell me the truth. He chose the lie every single time. My heart broke for her then, quietly, the way things break when they've already been damaged for a long time. 10 weeks after the gender reveal, Leonard called with news. Diane was settling rather than fighting, signing away all claims to marital assets in exchange for us not pursuing conspiracy charges. She agreed to leave Tennessee permanently. Marcus signed away all parental rights in exchange for us not pressing embezzlement and fraud charges, agreed to leave Nashville, agreed to maintain zero contact with Claire, and agreed to disappear from our lives entirely. "Do it," I said. "Get it in writing, get it legally binding, and get them out of our lives." As for the Belmead mansion, I sat with that decision for a long time. I couldn't give it to Claire. Every room would carry the echo of what had happened there. I couldn't sell it and profit from something that had caused so much pain. So I called Haven House, a Nashville organization that provides shelter for women escaping dangerous home situations. "Are you sure?" the director asked, stunned. "Mr. Cole, this property is worth millions." "I'm sure," I said. "Turn it into something good. Help women who need a safe place to rebuild their lives." That's what it was supposed to be in the first place. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life, because every single one of these stories is about the courage it takes to choose truth when a lie would have been so much easier. On a Tuesday morning, 10 weeks after the party that dismantled our world, at 3:47 a.m., I heard Claire's voice from down the hall. Dad, it's time." I was dressed and moving before I was fully awake. She was in the hallway, one hand braced against the wall, the other cradling her belly, pale but determined in a way that made every ounce of pride I had in her swell into something almost unbearable. "How far apart?" 6 minutes. I've been timing them for an hour. Didn't want to wake you for false labor. I grabbed her hospital bag, called Howard and Lauren from the truck. They were already in the Vanderbilt parking lot when we pulled up at 4:15. "How's she doing?" Lauren asked, taking Claire's other arm. "She's tough," I said. "Always has been." The labor was long. 13.5 hours of watching my daughter endure pain I could not fix or share or take from her. Lauren stayed beside her the entire time. Howard and I paced the hallway, drinking terrible hospital coffee, not saying much. "You doing okay, boss?" Howard asked around noon. "Just thinking about how differently this all could have gone," I said. "If I'd never found out. If the truth had never come out until after they were gone." "You think she's better off knowing?" I watched through the small window as Lauren helped Claire through a contraction. "Truth always wins in the end," I said. "Lies might feel comfortable for a while, but they rot everything from the inside. Better to tear the house down and rebuild on solid ground than keep living in something that's falling apart." At 5:17 that evening, I heard the sound that gave me back everything I thought I'd lost. A cry. Thin, sharp, absolutely perfect. The cry of a newborn taking her first breath. A few minutes later, the door opened. The nurse appeared with a tiny bundle and a hospital blanket. The mother says grandfather holds her first. My hands were shaking as I reached for her. The nurse adjusted my hold, making sure I supported her head. And then I was looking down at my granddaughter for the first time. So small, perfect, tiny features, a dusting of dark hair, eyes squeezed shut against the bright lights. Her little fingers curled into fists. And when I touched one gently, those tiny fingers opened and wrapped around my rough, calloused index finger with a grip that surprised me with its strength. She held on, like she knew. "Hello, sweetheart," I whispered, and my voice broke completely open. "I'm your papa. I'm so glad you're here." The tears came then, the kind I'd been holding back for weeks. Not grief, not rage. Something clean and full of hope that I hadn't felt in longer than I could remember. I carried her to Claire's room. My daughter was propped up in bed, exhausted and shining and more beautiful than I've ever seen any person look in my entire life. When I placed the baby in her arms, Claire's face transformed in a way that made everything, every bit of the pain, every terrible moment in that garden and those long nights in my workshop feel like it had led exactly here. "Dad," she said softly, "meet Emma Grace Cole." "Cole, not Ellison. My name." "She's ours," Claire said, reading my face. "Wade is who we are. It's the family she belongs to." I sat carefully on the edge of the bed and touched Emma's tiny hand and felt the future hum beneath my fingers. 6 months later, I woke to the sound I love most in this world. Emma babbling through the baby monitor at 5:30 a.m., the best alarm clock I've ever had. I padded down the hall to her room, the one we'd built together, walls painted soft yellow, curtains Claire sewed herself during her 3rd trimester. Emma was standing in her crib, holding the rails, bouncing on legs that were getting stronger every single day. When she saw me, her whole face became the sun. "Papa." "Good morning, sunshine." Claire was already in the kitchen making coffee, looking more like herself every week. Stronger, more certain. Not the woman she was before Marcus, but someone I admire more. Someone who earned her peace. "Good morning, Dad. Sleep okay?" "Like a rock." Rosa, Miguel's wife, came by every Sunday with homemade food because for the new mama. Barbara Sullivan came every Tuesday to sit with Emma, while Claire worked on her new interior design consulting business, building something that was entirely and completely her own. My crew had shown up one Saturday unannounced and finished out the nursery without accepting a single cent. "Family takes care of family," Miguel had said, and meant it. The $50 million I'd placed into an irrevocable trust for Emma would be waiting for her at 25. The mansion had become Haven House's new flagship shelter. $30 million had gone to various charities, and the rest had been used to grow Wade Construction and secure a retirement. I intend to spend exactly like this, right here, on this porch with these people. We weren't flashy rich. We didn't move to anything bigger. Claire drove a sensible SUV. I still have my truck. The house in Donaldson was modest and full of the kind of chaos that comes with a 6-month-old. And every inch of it was real. One evening, after Howard went home and Emma was asleep, Claire and I sat on the porch watching the stars come out one by one over Nashville. Dad, she said after a while, are you happy? Really happy? I know this isn't the retirement you planned. Stop, I said gently. This is exactly where I want to be. Even after everything you lost, I didn't lose anything worth keeping, sweetheart. I traded a big house full of lies for a small house full of truth. That's not a loss. That's the best deal I've ever made in my life. She rested her head on my shoulder, and we sat in the quiet while the crickets sang. I want to say something to you before I go. Don't be like the man I was for 29 years of my 30-year marriage. Don't confuse silence with loyalty. Don't confuse sacrifice with love. Don't assume that working harder will earn respect from someone who never intended to give it. When something feels wrong for a long time, it usually is. I waited for a dramatic moment to force the truth into the open. By then, the damage was already deep. Look honestly at your own life. Ask yourself if you're staying out of love or out of fear. Ask yourself who truly shows up when there's nothing left to give. Some people call what I did at that gender reveal party revenge. And maybe from the outside, that's what it looked like. But standing here now, with Emma's breathing coming through the monitor and Claire's laugh carrying in from the kitchen, I know the real name for what I did. I chose truth, and the truth didn't destroy my family. It revealed which family I actually had. The calloused, scarred hands that Diane called dirty, those same hands held my granddaughter the first moment she breathed outside the womb. And those same hands will teach her what honest work looks like, what real love looks like, what it means to build something true from the ground up and stand behind what you've made. That's the only legacy that lasts. Not the mansions, not the millions, not the address or the jewelry or the image. The truth, the people who stay, the love that chooses to show up every single ordinary Tuesday morning, without an audience and without a reward. That's what I built from the broken pieces. And it is, without question, the finest work I have ever done. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. And wherever you're listening from tonight, thank you. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. It means more than you know.